Good morning. Today's message will come from the book of St. John, the book of St. John, chapter 6. I read to you verses 16 through 21. 16 through 21 should be enough for us to get the thought of the message for today. And when evening was now come, his disciples went unto the sea, and entered into a ship, and went over the sea towards Capernaum, and it was now dark, and Jesus was not come to them. And the sea arose by reason of a great wind that blew. Disciples had experienced a little trouble. The wind had gotten high. And so when they had rowed about 5 and 20 or 30 furlongs, they see Jesus walking on the sea. And drawing nigh unto the ship, they were afraid. But he said unto them, It is I, be not afraid. Then they willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was at the land whither they went. This morning we find that the disciples had gotten to a ship and they was headed towards Capernaum. And the Bible tells us that as they rowed, it had become dark. In the midst of darkness, it said that they didn't see Jesus. Jesus was not with them. And then it says that as the sea began to arose it said that the great wind began to blow. And I imagine as the great wind began to blow in the midst of the darkness, that the disciples became worried. And it says that in this way I have to understand that they had gotten away from Jesus for a while. It says after 5 and 20 or 30 furlongs, that means that they had been out there rowing and trying to move that ship. And it says 5 to 6 miles out when you look at the furrows. And it says, and then finally after that, they had endured the hardship. It said finally they see Jesus walking on the sea and drawing nigh unto the ship, and they became afraid. But he said unto them, It is I, be not afraid. I take my text from the last verse. Then they willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was at the land whither they went. This morning I want to use for a subject, letting Jesus have the wheel in my life. Say that with me, letting Jesus have the wheel in my life. We can't be like disciples, wait for trouble to come and then we call on Jesus, but we have to let Jesus have the wheel every day of our lives. The Bible says that the wind began to blow real hard, and it said they began to look for Jesus, and it lets you know that somebody had to be in charge of that ship, but it says Jesus was not in the ship. That means that I don't know who was, I have to imagine that we're talking about the steering, getting this ship on the right path, and it says, and when they rowed about after a while, it says they willingly, listen to what they said, they willingly received him into the ship. This morning, letting Jesus have the wheel in your life. Willingly. Letting Jesus have the wheel in your life. For the Bible says after they willingly accepted him, immediately. Not later, not 2 days later, not come back in 2 weeks, not take this for 7 days, but the word said immediately the ship was at the land whither they went. With Jesus entering in the ship, they got to the place where they was going. We have to understand today that God is trying to take us to a place that we never seen before. God is trying to take us a place that he has gone and prepared for us. God is trying to take us to a place where there's no more sickness, no more dying, no more worrying, no more crying, no more labor, and all those things that we think are so hard, so difficult in life, all those things that we complain about in life. He's trying to get us to that place. But in order for him to get us to that place, which is called eternal life, we're going to have to let Jesus have the wheel in our life. This morning, I'm going to talk about that a little while. And all that Jesus has done for us. Think about this. And all that Jesus has worked out for us. And all that Jesus is still yet doing today. It appeared that this message would be easy to preach. Pastor, you can go ahead. I got it. I understand what you're saying. Letting Jesus have the wheel in my life. I got this, Pastor. I got it. But we have to understand right now, even in the midst of our lives, in the midst of us on the highways and byways of life, we have people out there that we drive among that have no license. and they behind the wheel. Some of them have never gone and tried to get their license, but they are behind the wheel. Some are behind the wheel legally, illegally, but they are still behind the wheel. This morning, we have to understand it all that Jesus is doing for us today. It appears that this message should be very easy to preach. With so many things that he has done for us, I should be able to open up the doors of the church and dismiss service by the topic today, letting Jesus have the wheel in my life. When I got this message right away, I thought about who has the wheel in my life, who's steering my path, who directed my path. And I don't know if you thought about the same thing, but when it says letting Jesus have the wheel in my life, it's time for me to examine myself and actually see who's steering things in my life. Which direction am I going in life? If you do not know it, I want to tell you this. It's one thing that I like to do. I love to drive. I love driving. Not only because I'm a transportation director, but I love driving from the moment my dad first taught me how to drive. From the moment my mom allowed me to drive her. I've always loved to drive. It seems like I never get tired of driving. Whether alone or with family, I always want to be the one behind the wheel. I want you to listen to what I just said, regardless whether I'm alone or with family. I always seem to be the one behind the wheel. And this message again for 2 weeks in a row have really got my attention. Because a few years ago, as I said, I love to drive. A few years ago, I had an opportunity to go with my wife, family, and we went on a trip, and it was a 9-hour trip, and probably a little longer because we stopped along the way, and we had rented a van. My sister-in-law had rented a van, and in the van was several licensed drivers. It may have been one person in there that maybe couldn't drive because we were all adults. And I think it was my mother-in-law. There was the only one in there that wasn't legally able to drive. But in the midst of all those legal drivers, I convinced them to let me do all the driving. I convinced them to let me be the only one that was going to be behind the wheel. I was behind the wheel going, and I was behind the wheel coming back. Amazing, isn't it? Just how much I love driving, being behind the wheel. And I am recalled on a trip that my sister had stopped by, and one of my sisters got sick, and it was late, and I said, let's go get in the car, we gone. We just immediately got in the car and drove to where she was at. Sister stopped by another sister one night, and 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and was wanting to go someplace. I said, let's go get in the car, and I was immediately behind the wheel. Even though with my sister and my wife, both having license, I convinced them, likewise, to let me do all the driving. That's amazing, isn't it? It's something about being behind the wheel. Not only for me, but I trust I'm not the only one that likes to be behind the wheel. My family and my wife's family many times have invited us and offered to pay that we're going to take you on a cruise. You and Mary going on a cruise. We're going to take y'all on a trip. We're going to fly. We're going here and we're going there. And I quickly tell them that I won't be able to go. And they said, Mary, why Carl don't ever want to go? We're paying for it. And what reason we have for not going? And the reason I give them time and time again is the same. Because I'm not the one that's behind the wheel. This morning, as I heard the sermon text today, it would quickly shine the light on me, and it was directed towards me. How did I get this way? Why am I this way? And will it ever change? Will it ever change? Think about that when God gave you the sermon, letting Jesus have the wheel in your life. This message, it goes with our message today about letting Jesus take the wheel. I don't know who have the wheel in your life. I don't know if you ever stop to think about who has the wheel in your life. But through the day, this message today, I pray and trust that once we finish that, you will come to a conclusion. But there's only one that needs to be behind the wheel in your life. So many times we want to do all the driving. Think about it. So many times we want to do all the driving. Many times we want to be the only one behind the wheel. 2 more things I want to share with you about me. Not too long ago, I had an opportunity to be my son driving instructor. And I do it all the time. I've done it, for the job I work in. So I had an opportunity to do it for my son. And I given him things to work on. And I told him he would, as he worked daily, reading the book, and as he watched videos time and time again, as I taken him out and showed him how to, and me being the driver, how to back up, how to pass, watching the signs, and just going over the things he had read. The time came. Oh my Lord. The time came for me to get behind the wheel and allow my son to get behind the wheel. What a trying time for me. Somebody said, well, Pastor, why would you say that? I heard you say you were the instructor. I heard you say you the one that had given him the things to do. And you're right. I was quickly reminded about Jesus. Jesus is the one that brought us into this world. Jesus is the one that directs our path. He is the one that guides us. He's the one that wakes us up from day to day. But still, we don't allow him to have the steering wheel in our life. I thought about that. Even though I had been my son instructor, now came the time that I had to get from behind the wheel and give him the key. The same about Jesus. As good as we think we are. Thought I was a good instructor. As good as we think we are. As good as we think we have been behind the wheel. It still comes a time when we have to allow Jesus to take the wheel in our life. We have to allow Jesus to take precedent. Today I see him. Today as I look back and I thought about that time, and I talked to my wife, and I get back and my wife, I say, honey, he did real good today. What I was worried about, what I was fretting about, wasn't no problem. He was a good driver, is a good driver. But my troubles came when it was time for me to get from behind the wheel and give him the key. Today I will tell you that he is a good driver and he's daily working to get better. But I had to learn how to get from behind the wheel. Next experience I would like to share with you is experience with my wife. My. I must tell you that my wife was driving. I didn't have to get to teach her because my wife was driving when I met her. Not only was my wife driving before I met her, and through our years of being together, she have often reminded me that she was driving way before I even thought about driving. She said, I got hardship license, so I didn't have to go to driver's ed. I didn't have to do this. I was driving before you even got. So she's right. She had a jump start on me. But even though she started and she loved and she was a driver, I still somehow became the permanent driver for my wife and I. And as time progressed, I had to learn fast that I wasn't the only one that could fit behind the wheel. And the reason I say that because my wife loved to drive. I love to drive. And so over the years now we've grown to know each other. And so now it's not a matter of who's going to be behind the wheel. We see who's going to be the first one to get on the passenger side. Think about it. Used to be a time when I was a dominant driver. I felt that I should do the driving. There was a time that she wanted to do the driving. So we was back and forth. But now, after many years, we don't worry about who behind the wheel. We look and see who's going to the passenger side. Reason being, as I said, she loved to drive. So now, after 42 years of marriage, I know how. I've learned how to get from behind the wheel and allow her to drive. And I must say to you today, what a blessing. Even though I was being territorial, even though I was being in control, even though it had to be about me, when I allowed my wife to take the wheel, when I allowed my wife to get behind the wheel and drive, I must say I've learned to love the other side. I've learned to love that passenger seat. I am rolling the back seat, but I've learned to love that passenger seat. And the reason being, because they say I'm nosy, but I get to see a lot more. I like to see buildings. I like to see bridges. I like to see fields. I like to see just about everything. I get to see more. In that passenger seat, I get to do more. I want to call my family. I want to write. I want to read. I get to do a lot more in that passenger seat. And I have to tell you that I love it because not only I get to do that, but I also get to rest more. See, when you get in the passenger seat, it comes with some bonus things. In that passenger seat, I get to adjust myself more comfortably. I get to rest more comfortably. And not only that, but even in that passenger seat, I can even fall asleep. Isn't that amazing? I've learned how to fall in love with that passenger seat. But I must say this, as comfortable as that passenger seat may be, I always somehow get a staring look from my wife. As comfortable as that seat may be, I still see my wife shaking her head. As comfortable as that seat may be, I still see my wife put her finger up to the mouth as to shh. And someone may be wondering why my wife is doing that. Why is my wife giving me that look? And the reason, I want to be the first to tell you. And the reason my wife is giving me that look, because she's always accusing me of driving from the passenger side. I don't know about you males or females, but my wife is always accusing me of driving from the passenger side. Go this way. Why didn't we go that way? Don't get over yet. You can't get over. Honey, how fast are you driving? Do you have the cruise on? Why don't you turn here? Are you going to pass that truck or not? Constantly saying something on the other side. Am I the only one? I hope I'm not the only one. But through the years, my wife has reminded me of what kind of passenger seat driver I really am. Not a backseat driver. What kind of passenger seat driver I really am. And that she reminded me of my ways, reminded me of my actions, reminded me, I quickly discovered that I really am a passenger seat driver. When I am all alone thinking that I was the best of the best behind the wheel, I really am a passenger seat driver. But I want to believe that I'm getting better and better. But I constantly found myself telling my wife things as though I was still driving. What an illustration to go with our sermon text today. Because although we belong to Jesus, although we love Jesus, although we serve Jesus, we still want to tell Jesus what to do. As much as we claim to be in love, as much as we claim many years to be his child and all how close you are, as close as we are to Jesus, we still want to be a passenger seat driver, telling Jesus how to do, telling Jesus what to do, telling Jesus when to do, telling Jesus why to do. We even go a step further and tell him where to go. That's amazing, isn't it? Passenger seat driver. If we try to tell our children, if we try to tell our spouses, you must believe that we're constantly trying to tell Jesus. I preached a sermon that Jesus don't need our help. We need to allow Jesus to have your way, Lord. Have your way. The songwriter said, where he leads me, I will follow him. Not only will I follow him, I'll go with him all the way. But in order to do that, we must allow Jesus to get behind the steering in our life. Even knowing our ways and our thoughts are so different than Jesus, we still try to tell Jesus the 5 W's. Even though his ways, his thoughts, he said, your eyes haven't seen, your ears haven't. You can't even imagine what I can do in your life. But we still try to tell Jesus the 5 W's. That's why this message is so strong today. Letting Jesus take the wheel. And as Jesus takes the wheel in our life, we have to be reminded that he doesn't need our help. As much as we think we know, as much as we think we've been through, as much as we think we got it all together. Because there's some people knows it all, have it all down, and you can't tell them anything. I stopped by today to tell you that Jesus, as much as you think, Jesus does not need our help. We need to be reminded that where he leads us, we must be willing to follow. We must not be willing to negotiate. We must not be willing to redirect, not try to do it another way. For the Bible states there is a way that seems right to man, but the end thereof is death. Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life. He is the only one that should have to be behind the steering in our life. This morning, I don't know what you're experiencing. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what you're facing. Everybody is going through something. I say it all the time. I really don't know. And you don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what storms I'm in. You don't know what trials and tribulation that I'm going through. But and neither do I know what the next man is going through. But there's one thing I do know. And listen to God. There's one thing I do know. Jesus wants to take the wheel in your life. I don't care what it is. If you think it's too hard, if you think it's too difficult, if you think it's something that you've never seen before, I stop by to let you know that he said there's nothing new under the sun. I want to take the wheel in your life. I want to become your leader. I want to become your guidance. I want to direct you. One lady said that she had a stick on her car and she said that Jesus is my co-pilot. Jesus don't want to be your co-pilot. He want to be your pilot. He want to be the one behind the wheel. He want to direct your steps. He want to guide your path. He want to be a lamp unto your feet. He want to be a light unto your path. Jesus want to take the wheel in your life. Church, I don't know about you, but as I said, I used to be dominant about behind that wheel, but when God gave me this message, I have no problem letting Jesus have the wheel in my life. Too many of God's children are on the wrong path. Too many of God's children are going down the wrong road. Too many of God's children are lost, going to and fro. I say that to say this. Too many of God's children have let the devil get behind the wheel. Let me say that again. Too many of God's children have let the devil get behind their wheels of life. And when I say God's children, I'm not talking about just the young children. I'm talking about babies to seniors have allowed the devil to get behind the wheel in their life. And if not behind the wheel, we're allowing him to be the passenger seat or the backseat driver in our life. We have to understand that we can't allow him to have no directions in our life. Not realizing with him behind the wheel, with him being in the passenger seat, with him being in the backseat driver, with him directing us from wherever position he's at, always leads to trouble. Always lead down the wrong path. I said earlier, a lot of God's children are on the wrong path. A lot of God's children are doing the wrong thing. And this Christian life that God wants us to live in must be with Jesus as our guide. Must be with Jesus as our captain. Must be with Jesus as our GPS. And I say that because he is the only one that can lead us from earth all the way to heaven. Don't need Google. Don't need this. All we need is Jesus. He is the only one that can lead us from earth all the way to heaven. This morning, I pray and trust that you're ready to let Jesus take the wheel in your life. I pray and trust you take a look at your life and see who's directing your life. See where Jesus fit in. See if Jesus even getting to go with you. See if Jesus, when you wake up in the mornings, he the one that you're giving the will to. Or you the one that's submitting and moving over and allowing him to direct your steps. I pray and trust and want you to believe that Jesus knows what's best for you. And he also knows the best way to achieve your blessings and your rewards. Somebody's striving towards something. I stop by today, good results, whatever it may be. I want you to know that whatever it is, Jesus is the only way. He is the best way to achieve your blessings and rewards today. Today you need to learn and know that there's only one person. There's only one person behind the steering wheel. And that person must always be Jesus. Make no mistake about it. In your regular life, look at your cars, look at your truck. Only one person fit behind the wheel. Same thing in your life. Only one person should fit behind the wheel in your life. And that person need to be Jesus. Church, make no mistake about it. From the pulpit through the church and back into the world, many of us have been a backseat driver to Jesus. Many of us has been a passenger seat to Jesus, telling Jesus what to do, telling Jesus how to do, leaning to our own understanding, trying it my way, trying it their way, trying some other way, and then trying Jesus' last. We all have made mistakes, but we have learned how to give up control of my way, give up control of my thoughts, and give Jesus the will to have your way, Lord. Have your way, Lord. this morning, trusting and believing that just Jesus taking the wheel in our life, the best is yet to come. Somebody said things are going well yet, but we don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know what this afternoon holds. Job said we can lose it all. Everything can be going well, but Job said, I am an example that it all can be taken away. But I stop by and say, with Jesus behind the wheel in your life, the best is yet to come. Somebody's troubled about something. Somebody's just not sleeping well, not eating well, just worrying about someone. The Bible, God told me to tell you today, by allowing Jesus to get behind the wheel in your life, the best is yet to come. The book of Jeremiah 29 and verse 11, he says, Jesus speaking these words, he said, if I know the thoughts that I have for you. He said, I know the thoughts I have for you, thoughts of peace and not evil, to give you an expected end. Good things are headed your way. Blessings are headed your way. He said, then shall you call upon me, and you shall go and pray unto me, and I will answer unto you. Because he is a prayer answering God. He said, what are you, he asked the question today, what are you seeking today? Whom are you seeking? And finally, who is behind your will of life? Is it the adversary? Is it the world? Is it someone else? Is it a complete stranger? Or is it Jesus behind your will? Today, church, I'm encouraging you. If your answer isn't Jesus who is behind your will, I invite you. If it isn't Jesus who is behind your will, I invite you to pull over. Take a pit stop and move over. Don't just stop, but move over and let Jesus have the will to your life. And as you let Jesus have the will to your life, know that he doesn't need your help. He doesn't need my help. When we allow Jesus to take the wheel, it's saying let go and let God have the wheel. And because he is the only one that can see the big picture in your life. He is the only one that can see the roads ahead in your life. So today, I say as I get in that passenger seat, I can rest. I can do more. I can see more. I can sit back and enjoy the ride. So today I'm encouraging you to allow Jesus to have the steering wheel in your life and sit back and enjoy the ride, because Jesus does not want to be your co-pilot. He doesn't want to be your driving instructor. Jesus wants the steering wheel to your life, and he wants to steer you from earth all the way to heaven. The question he leaves with you today, will you let him have the wheel? I pray and trust that you got not thought of God's message today. I pray and trust that through God's word that it will allow you to change, or allow you to help someone else see something in you that would allow them to make a change, because Jesus definitely wants to be the steering wheel in our life. No Google Maps needed. He said, I want to be that. I am the GPS. He said, not only will I direct you through this world and the life that you live in, he said, I'll even direct you through death. And then after death, he said, guess what? I want to direct you to eternal life. I got the steering wheel that we're going to guide you from earth all the way to heaven. What a mighty good God we serve. I pray and trust you will not only hide these words in your heart, but I pray that you will let this blessing to be a blessing, these words be a blessing to someone else. Because as I say, a blessing isn't a blessing till you share it with someone else. I pray that you will be richly blessed, not only this hour and this day, but the days to come. May God continue to richly bless you and your family. God bless you. Let him have the will.